If you've been in the corporate world for any amount of time, you almost certainly have been on at least one team building or team bonding or similarly named day where the company gets people from across the teams, across departments, maybe the entire organization, gets them together, you do some activities, something magical is supposed to happen, and then from that point forward, the company does better, sells more, so on. That almost never happens, and there's a very good reason for that, and that is exactly what we're going to cover today. Why team building days fail, what's the one thing you can do to make sure yours succeed, and that one thing is most likely remembering that it's not about the plastic. So a couple of years ago, I did a workshop with this chap. He's Jamie Thompson from a company called MTA, and they sell experiential learning kits. It's a fancy name, and what that looks like is a couple of big bags full of bits of plastic, tubing, rope, other bits and pieces, and quite a few folders in the case of MTA. So you look at that and you think, what on earth is that going to do to help us as a company or as a team? The exercises get you doing things like this, which is actually a really fun exercise. And there's another one here involving blindfolds, so it starts to look a bit weird. Anyway, I did the course, 2 excellent days, and walked away as a certified MTA experiential learning instructor. Obviously, MTA is not the only company that does this type of training and produces these type of products. There are other ones. Metalog is a very well-known one, particularly well-known for how expensive their stuff is, although it's very nicely engineered. And then there's Northgate, who do a lot more of the sort of board game style. They also do some physical proper-based games as well. This is one of their best sellers. It's called Escape from Mars. And there's even a special line of Lego, which a lot of people have never heard of before. Lego Serious Play. It does use traditional Lego bits, and you might wonder what on earth is Lego got to do with team building or business sales and so on. And if you're of a certain age, it might make you think of a show called The Thick of It. And there's a character in The Thick of It who was very out there with the ideas of team building. And this was one of his thought camps in an episode where you all sit on the ground in a circle and you make no filter. You just come up with ideas and then you say yes and ho, and you chuck there's a speaking conch or speaking ball to another member of the team. Painful to watch, and even more painful to be a part of. So is there any hope? Is there any saving team building days? It's not about the plastic. This is something that Jamie said repeatedly on our course. And to put that in perspective, let's define the absolute opposite of that. What is the opposite of a useful, beneficial training day? I went on a team building day fairly recently. Very well-known company was running it. Lots of people there. It would have been an extremely expensive day based on the day rates of the amount of people that were there. And we did exercises. There was some blindfolded stuff, and there were some plastic bricks, not Lego, but similar things. We did these activities, and they took near enough a full day. And at the end of the exercises, essentially nothing happened. We finished the exercises, people would go for a coffee, a leg stretch, and then we went for lunch, and then we did some more and do some more exercises, and they just stopped. So we did the exercises, and at no point did we sit down and do a debrief. And the debrief is where all of the value of a team building day lies. So when Jamie talked about it's not about the plastic, his point was, in the debrief, anytime you find yourself or your team talking about who did what with what bit of plastic and how they could have made a better Mars lunar buggy or suspension bridge or whatever the exercise was, to then step back from that and actually focus on what you're really there for. You're not on the team building day to build these buggies or bridges. You're there to learn probably team working, communication, that type of stuff. So the debrief is where all of that value and all of the learning comes from. And this is where I think MTA as a company really excels. This is just a couple of pages I've screenshotted from some of the debrief sheets. So when you've done an exercise in the sort of MTA school of thought, you spend, say, at least as long as the physical activity took on the debrief. So you can see for this one, this was an activity called the culprit, and this is just a couple of the pages of the debriefing document. There are more. Really interesting first question. So if you were to do the task again, which 5 of the following would be most helpful to the team, and rank your answers from 1 to 5. So that's a great way to see if people in your team value the same ways of approaching a task or the same ways of communicating with each other and so on. And then there's summary questions on the other page there about benefits of giving feedback to each other. How can you ensure that when you give feedback it's constructive, and what could you do at work or socially to benefit more from this activity? So you're specifically being asked to reflect on what you just did with the plastic bits, but not talk about or think about the plastic itself, to focus on the learnings that you've taken from the activity. And that is, if you're going to do any sort of team building day, whether it's simple activities you found on the internet, all the way up to some of these sort of corporate level team building kits that are several £1,000s to buy and then maybe an extra £1,000 to certify in. It really almost matters not at all what you're working with physically. You could probably get a few scrap bits of cardboard, like Blue Peter style, from your kitchen and have a really good team building day with those if the reflection and the debrief sessions are of a good quality. So with that in mind, there's a couple of just general bits of advice to finish with. When you put on a team building day, you have to start with the end in mind. So you have to know why you're doing this in the first place. At the most basic level, you are costing the company a day's worth of work for the people that are there. And you might have maybe 10 people, maybe 50 or up to 100. So they have to be there for a reason. It shouldn't just be, oh, we haven't done a team building day in a year, we better put one in the calendar and do stuff. So what are the learning points that you are trying to focus on? What are the areas of development? Has there been any research done within the company to find out where there are areas of weakness for possible improvement and so on? So that's purposeful. Team building exercises should be carefully selected to address specific goals or challenges that the team faces. And again, to hammer the point home, it doesn't really matter what physically those activities, what form they take, whether it's Lego or Metalog or MTA or anything. It's how are the debriefs structured for those activities? What is the focus of what is reflected on and spoken about after the activity is finished? General engagement advice: activities that encourage active participation from all team members are more likely to be effective. So with a few exceptions, generally you want activities where everyone is involved all the time. It is easy for people to tune out if they're not actively involved in the activity. Ideally, if you're running one of these days, the people attending have left their phones and laptops either at home or at least outside. But if you are dealing with people who need their devices on them at all times, you really want to keep them engaged in the activity. Otherwise, Outlook and Teams will steal their attention back, and the constant pinging from Slack and all the other ways of communication we have now will drag people out of the day that you've worked so hard to get them to. And finally, time. The activities themselves can be short. You don't have to run a full 8-hour team building day to get the most from a day. In fact, shorter days are often better, and cut those shorter days up into even shorter chunks with lots of break time, lots of refreshment time between. But the key point is that the debriefs, as a general rule, should take as long as the activity. So if you spent half an hour seeing who can build the tallest spaghetti and marshmallow structure, to quote a classic team building activity, if that took half an hour, you really should spend at least half an hour going through what happened, reflecting on learning points, ideally have some preset questions like MTA provides. Tends not to work if you just get people together and say, does anyone have any thoughts on what we just did? Give people some structure to work to and tailor that towards what it is you're trying to get out of this day in the first place. So that's the end of the video for today. If you do have any questions about team building or experiential learning, any of that stuff, please get in touch. I love to talk about it, and I might be able to help you with some challenges that you've got. So hope you enjoyed the video. There's another one about to be suggested somewhere on the screen. Click on that if you want to learn some more, and I hope to see you in the next one.